Okay, so in today's video, I actually want to talk through the 3 stages that I think many of us go through when we are trying to take control of our finances and actually build wealth. So if you are someone who is wondering what stage am I at when it comes to my finances, then you definitely want to keep watching this video. Okay, so let's talk about the first stage, and I actually want to call this the YOLO stage. You know that saying, when you only live once. And essentially in this stage, you are someone who maybe spends money on anything and everything. So maybe you tend to make a lot of impulse purchases. So rather than buying things that maybe you actually need or that you thought about, you might find that you just tend to buy things all the time on a whim, and then when you actually buy that particular thing, you're not really happy about the purchase you've made, and you maybe question why you actually bought that thing in the first place. I would say that during this stage as well, you might find that you may try to save money here and there, but it's not very consistent, and whenever you do save money, something else may pop up and you may have to actually dip into your savings just to actually pay for something. And so you may end up being in the same position as you were before with hardly any savings. Now, another problem you might have is that you don't really understand where your money is going. So you don't necessarily have some type of budget or spending plan. Essentially what happens is that you get paid and then you basically spend the money, and then you have no idea where the rest of the money is going. And that potentially could be a problem, especially if you're not taking into account any specific bills that you might have. Let's say that you need to make sure that your rent is paid on time, or maybe you need utility bills to be paid on time. And sometimes you may find that because you have already spent some of the money without thinking about your other bills, you may end up making late payments because you're not in control with understanding where your money is actually going. Or potentially you may have even tried to do some type of spending plan or a budget, but you really struggle to stick to it. So yes, you may actually set your budget at the beginning of the week or the month, but then by the end of the month you find that you consistently overspend and you end up going over budget, and so you're then not able to actually save any money. And if we're then thinking about your emotions when it comes to handling money, you may have a lot of fear when it comes to just money in general. Maybe you're scared to even look at your bank account and see how much you're actually spending. Maybe you have some debt and you don't actually know how much debt you have because you don't want to face the reality of just understanding your numbers. Maybe you're even scared to have conversations when it comes to money, and so you don't really talk to anyone about money at all. And so even though you may have a problem when it comes to spending, no one really knows because you haven't been able to go and seek help and you're not really talking to anyone about it. And if you're liking this video so far, then feel free to give me a thumbs up, as it really does help to support the channel, plus it's free. And a big reason as to why I can resonate with this is because I was in the exact same position about 5 years ago now. So prior to 2018, I was someone who would consistently spend my money. I had no idea where my money was going. Even though I didn't have a lot of essential expenses, my money would just disappear by the end of the month. And I would always remember literally having pennies in my bank account by the end of the month, just waiting for payday, thinking I need to be paid right now because I have no idea how else I'm going to pay my bills. And there were also times where I did not have any savings whatsoever. I didn't even have a savings account at the time. But if something happened, like if my car broke down, I was basically financially screwed, and I would end up having to borrow money from other people just to actually pay to fix my car because I had already maxed out my overdraft, so I was already in debt and I had no other cash. And so I essentially call this the YOLO stage because what typically happens is that sometimes we almost want to forget about our true realities, and so we want to focus on really just enjoying the money now and worry about everything else later. And it's not to say that you shouldn't focus on today and enjoy the present, because that is obviously important, but the problem that you may have in this stage is that if you just solely focus on your today, what will happen is that how you handle your money today will also also impact how you handle your money in the future. And essentially what you may be doing is just kicking the can down the road, and you may even be making things worse as time goes on. Now, I would definitely say that I resonate with this stage because I've personally been there before, and so have my clients when they actually start working with me. So please do not be ashamed if you are currently at that stage. Just believe that you can get out of it, and there are so many different things that you can do. So if you maybe do resonate with this and want a bit more one-on-one support, then I'll leave a link in the description below for you, which is all about my one-on-one coaching and how I can help you with that. But let's now talk about some of the things that I think you should be focusing on if you are trying to get out of this stage. So if you find that maybe you're in the YOLO stage, here's what I want you to focus on. The first thing I want you to do is understand why you actually want to change. How do you want to change your future when it comes to your finances? Are you just sick of living paycheck to paycheck, and do you not want to be in that position over the next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? And why is that important to you? Do you want to get to a point where you really don't want to worry about money? Or maybe you've decided that you don't want to have to work in your job for the next 40 to 50 years just for you to pay bills. You may therefore want to get to a point where actually you want to become financially secure and even financially independent. By really being clear on what you want, this will now start to help you to actually transition from that phase so that you're no longer just thinking about today. The other thing I would say that you want to focus on is start getting comfortable when it comes to your numbers. And what I mean by this is getting comfortable with understanding how much your expenses come to, how much do you typically spend, how much debt do you have. And yes, although those numbers can be definitely very scary, especially if you've never looked at them before, what I would say is they can actually liberate you. So for example, when I decided that I was going to start taking control of my finances, one of the best things I did was actually write down all my numbers. So I wanted to understand exactly how much debt I had and also how much savings and investments I had. Spoiler alert, it was 0. But just seeing that number, which was about 16 grand of debt, although it was very scary and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of debt, it actually liberated me because then I understood what I want to focus on. And I understood, okay, this is the number that I'm dealing with. How can I now start to pay it off so that I can, of course, pay off my debt, but I can also start to increase my savings and eventually start investing. It was only until I really started to get intimate with my numbers and truly understand what I was working with that helped me to take the action to actually now pay off my debt and take control of my finances. Plus, I would also say that actually looking through my bank statements really helped me because I could then understand my spending patterns. I realized that I typically spent money on pretty much anything and everything, but I wasn't very happy with the purchases I made. It didn't really make a huge difference to me. I wasn't spending money on things that actually mattered to me. And so by looking at my bank statements, I realized that one of the things I needed to focus on was actually spending money on things that were more important to me and disregarding the rest. So yes, although looking at your numbers can be very scary, I would definitely say that it can actually benefit you because then you can understand what next steps to take after that. Okay, so let's now move over to the second stage, and I call this the intentional stage. Now, during this stage, I would say there are probably two types of people there. The first one I would say are people who are already naturally savers, so they don't really have a problem when it comes to spending money. Maybe they don't even like spending money at times, or potentially you could still be a natural spender, but you have decided that you actually want to take more control of your finances and you actually want to start saving more money. So in this stage, you are really trying to start learning how to be a bit more consistent with your savings. Maybe sometimes you do tend to save money, but an unexpected expense comes up and you end up having to use your savings a little bit, but you're also able to replenish those savings quite quickly. Maybe you're starting to budget a lot more consistently. There may be times where you go slightly over budget, but to be honest, when it comes to your budget, you kind of already know how to do it, but you may just need some small tweaks here and there. And then when it comes to your spending, you actually decide to become a bit more intentional with your spending. So rather than, spending money on pretty much anything and everything and doing impulse purchases all the time, you're now starting to think about whether you actually want to spend money on particular things savings, hence why you now start to spend much more intentionally. And then maybe you get to a point where you realize that actually you want to save a lot more money, and it almost becomes a game, and you're kind of asking yourself, how can I save as much as possible? But because of this mindset, you may also start to feel guilty when you spend your money. So if you're a natural saver, you may already be feeling this from the get-go and not want to spend your money because you feel like spending money is bad. But also, if you're someone who's maybe used to spending your money, but then you really want to take control of your finances and save more, you may find that you go to the other extreme where you then don't really want to spend money because, again, you feel like there's some type of guilt. And maybe it's because you're trying to avoid going back to the position where you were always spending your money on everything. I know this because I have a lot of clients who basically go to the two extremes where they've been used to spending money and then they decide, actually, I really want to save money. They're very clear on the financial goals that they have, but then it gets to a point where they pretty much want to save all of their paycheck because they don't want to go back to the position that they were before, and they may also feel guilty every time they spend money. So if you currently find that you are in this stage, one of the key things you need to focus on is how to create a balance between saving and spending. Because essentially what is happening is, if you find that you were already in the first stage where you were just thinking about today and you move into the second stage, what may happen is that you're consistently thinking about your future rather than thinking about both. So it's really important to create a balance where, yes, you are thinking about your future, which is great, but you are also enjoying your today as well. And I would even argue that when it comes to learning how to manage your money, it's not just about saving every single penny. If you really know how to manage your money well, it is because you know how to control your money to the point where you can both save your money and you can spend your money at the same time. And so if you've learned how to master how to create a balance of the two, that is where you can truly understand how to manage your money well. Another thing I think you will need to focus on if you are in this stage is the idea of thinking beyond saving. Now, yes, saving money is definitely good. I think it's one of the key foundational things that you can do, and it's why I harp on being able to learn how to save, because you can do so many things with that. But what I've also found is that for many of us, we tend to just think about saving money in the bank account without thinking about anything else, and without thinking, how can we go beyond saving? How can we actually use our savings to grow our money even further? And so one of the key focuses you will want to start thinking about is, how can you actually grow some of those savings? How can you start learning how to invest so that you, of course, save some of that money, but you also use some of those savings to make your money work for you? Okay, so moving on to stage 3, and I call this stage the accelerate phase. So when it comes to this stage, this is where you are now starting to, again, think beyond the saving element, and you're truly starting to build wealth, and you're focusing on really building assets so that you can have money working for you rather than you having to work for money. So during this stage is when you now start thinking about how you can actually invest your money. And I would say that during this stage, there are probably 2 things that you realize. The first thing is that when it comes to investing, there is just so much information out there, and maybe you feel like it's really, really overwhelming just simply thinking about what you can invest in and how to get started. And then the other thing you may also realize is that potentially you could have invested money before, but you essentially got burned. And so you may be terrified of the idea of investing your money because you don't want to end up losing money again. So when it comes to this accelerate stage, and I would say this is personally the stage that I'm in, what I would say is that one of the key things that you want to focus on is being really clear on your goals. And the reason why I say be clear on your goals is because when you have clarity with what you're trying to work towards, you will then start to understand how investing will help you to achieve it. And you will only invest in things that are going to help you fulfill those goals. So that means that the research you do when it comes to investing should be marrying up to help you achieve your specific goal. You're not going to be looking at the latest shiny object thinking, oh, I just need to invest in that. You should be very clear on what you're working towards, and then you should be asking yourself, what is the best investment that is going to help me get to that point? Another thing that I would say to focus on is to just educate yourself around the reasons why people lose money when it comes to investing. For many people, the reason why they lose money isn't actually due to the investment itself, but it is due to the behaviors behind the person who is invested in that particular thing. It is because of the way that person has thought about their investment and how they have behaved that has caused them to actually lose money. So by understanding why people typically lose money when they're investing their money can help you to then understand how to not lose money when it comes to investing. Now, if you're someone who really resonated with any of these 3 stages and want a bit more support, maybe you're someone who's used to spending a lot of money and you're struggling to save, or maybe you're someone who has started saving money but you actually struggle to spend and have a balance of both, or maybe you're even someone who actually knows how to save, but when it comes to investing, everything just feels overwhelming, but you really want to start investing your money but you're not sure how, then make sure you do check out my one-on-one coaching, because what I've been able to do is help so many clients literally go from that YOLO stage where they're spending their whole paycheck to actually saving money consistently and ultimately investing their money consistently so that they can start working towards things like financial independence. So make sure you check that out if you haven't already. You could book a free call just to find out more about working one-on-one with me. So I'll link more information up here for you and in the description below. But when it comes to these 3 stages, just remember that I have experienced all 3. I have been the person who has spent their whole paycheck. Then I was the person who tried to save as much money as possible and then felt guilty about spending money. And I was also the person who had no idea how to invest her money, but I've of course come out of the other side of that. And so I really wanted to share this video just to share some things that you may want to think about depending on what stage you're in. So I really hope this was useful. So if you did like this video, then please do give me a thumbs up if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments, what stage do you think you're at? Is it YOLO, intentional, or accelerate stage? I do post every Tuesday, so if you would like to know more, then of course you can subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys next week.